Good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. My name is Dawid Prokopowicz, and together with Piotr Waszkiewicz, we have a pleasure to welcome Vitor, who will be presenting today, who will be our speaker. Hello, Vitor, how are you doing?
Hello, David and Piotr. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm doing good.
Hello.
How about you guys?
The same. Vitor, can you tell us, in short, in in few words, like a short introduction, what you will be speaking about today?
So today topic is going to be accessibility. I see that this has been, as of lately, like a topic that more and more people are interested in hearing about. This presentation today is actually a result of already a couple of presentations that I've done internally at Avanade, and people were very interested. I'm happy now to share some insights about how people can kind of kickstart with accessibility development, and which tools they should be using, or which tools I advise using, as I actually had to work for a couple of years for a client that accessibility was top priority for us. So yeah, hope I will help other developers as well.
All right, thank you. That sounds interesting. So, with further ado, I will leave the stage for you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, David. All right. So everyone, let's jump right in. I also don't want to take too much time into this introduction, because actually I have a lot of ground to cover today. I want to cover a couple of things so everyone can have like a very nice, let's say, basic understanding of how accessibility works and how everything is working. So our agenda for today, as you can see, we are going to talk a little bit about the accessibility guidelines, a couple of things like words that maybe some of you have heard about, some of you maybe not, WCAG standards, the AA and AAA, things like that. Then going to talk a little bit about some developer tools that are very helpful for you when you are developing accessible web applications. Then also a little bit about testing, what things will help us to test these web applications and to detect some issues early on in development and also later on in development. And also we will go into some ARIA examples. ARIA is going to be one of the key things that you will see from the presentation that we should kind of focus on. The ARIA attributes are very, very important. And also I'm going to show a couple of scenarios where you will see, I have actually a demo that I kind of separated into two parts. So you folks can see how using a screen reader, how will it look for someone that, for example, uses the screen reader, for example, a blind person is going to navigate through a web application or something like that. So just to give you kind of an example, right? A very quick introduction about me. So I've been a software developer since 2013, more or less. I'm a full stack developer, so these are some of the technologies that I mostly work with, although as probably some other fellow full stack engineers might know the pain that we probably do way more technologies that we should be doing. So I'm currently 6 years at Avanade, and I'm actually a Portuguese living in Poland for already 11 years. So yeah. Also on my free time and my hobbies and the things that I like to do, it's mostly about football, video games, some traveling, and also cooking. I really do like, at the end of the day, after long hours in front of the screen, cooking is actually one of those kind of, let's say, therapeutic things to do. Okay, so just a quick introduction. Let's jump right in. So accessibility. why are we talking about accessibility today? So accessibility is essentially in a world that it's becoming, well, I think we are already in it, that it's an online world, that so many things now became available online, and even some people working remotely and things like that. So more and more things are becoming available online, and we need to make sure that we make the web available and supporting these abilities that other people's might have, right? So what I like to call it, it's like the digital braille. So it's kind of like giving these people with disabilities like the opportunity to see the web at the same, let's say, level um, as we, that the people that don't have disabilities see the web, right? So we need to focus in four kind of things. So sound, vision, motion, and cognition. I will get into that in in a little bit further. So okay, so accessibility guidelines. So these were standards and things that were developed by the Web Accessibility Initiative. This is from part of the World Wide Web Consortium, and they came up with kind of these accessibility guidelines, which we call it WCAG. And we have these three, as you can see here, the three conformance levels. We have the single A, the double A, and the triple A. So we are mostly focused on the double A, as the triple A is like, I would say, god tier accessibility, right? So this is like, um, we don't generally need to shoot for triple A, but the main focus is the double A, and the single A is actually kind of, let's say, of a bare minimum. And if we are talking about websites or web apps that are related with, I don't know, governance or education and things like this, we almost I'm almost certain that you will need to implement the double A, or that the standard that they need to shoot for is double A. So what are these, like, also like the four principles from like the standard and that of web accessibility? So we have the perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So perceivable is that users understand and they can see the information that it's presented to them, or in the ways that they can understand, right? Um, Operable is that the users can actually navigate your website, your web application. Understandable, that there is no some kind of like weird navigation going on. We will see some kind of examples as well further, so that the UI is understandable to our users. And also robust, meaning that there are many tools, many assistive tools that are going to help our users navigate through web pages. We don't have just one simple screen reader, for example. We don't have just one simple browser. So it's kind of in this way that we are going with, right, with the robustness. So the WCAG standards. So two standards to kind of know about. So it was 2.0. This one was the first kind of published. I would say the mostly wide adopted one, let's say, and it was published in 2008. This is when they come up with the three conformance levels, and they had a bunch of like success criteria. In this case, it was 51 success criteria. But as you know, the web is evolving. Many new things since 2008 came to fruition, and then it was necessary to up the standards, and it went to 2.1. So 2.1 is kind of the one that we currently are following, and we should be following, published in 2018. So this one was mostly focused on adding criteria that we didn't have previously for things like mobile technologies and accessibility for mobile devices, because before we didn't have web in our phones. 2008 was barely, it was nothing compared to what it is today, right? So just a quick kind of information here. And yeah, so types of disabilities. So there are many disabilities. Yeah, so we have visual disabilities like, the color blindness, the low vision, and things like that. So we need to make sure that we have enough color contrast in our web applications. Auditory disability. So we also have people that have hearing impairments and things like that. So they cannot listen properly, or they just don't listen at all. So we need to kind of give some live captions and things like this, for videos and resources like that. So motor disabilities, so people that have difficulties working with mouse and keyboard, right, and they use some sort of device to do to navigate through websites, through web applications. And the cognitive disabilities, people that have the problems or issues with cognitive abilities, like understanding, memory, and focus, and things like that. So just a kind of a quick fact I wanted to throw here was that there is roughly 320 million people worldwide that have color vision deficiency. So this kind of should give an idea, or like a how important having accessible websites, and that our applications are accessible to others, and to people with impairments, right? So one very important thing I would like to mention is um, accessibility and law. So accessibility is not just a nice thing to have. So in certain cases, like and I'm going to talk about some kind of clients, right? Working for a consulting company like Avanade. Um, so we have multiple clients, and our clients have multiple needs, right? And not everyone has the same kind of requirements when we are building web applications. But I can tell you that, for example, in my time working for a Canadian client, the product was going to be for universities, for a mental health application for universities, and this was imperative. Accessibility is imperative, and if institutions do not provide accessible web applications on their websites, on their mobile apps, whatever it is that they are providing to, for example, their students or their clients, they can be fined. And the fines are not low. Like, there are really big fines, because essentially, we can even give like an example here in Poland with, if someone wants to submit their taxes, yes, the PIT, right? So if they want to submit their taxes and they want to submit it online, and there is no good accessibility on the website to submit the forms in a proper way, this is very problematic, and this can have like legal consequences. And this is mostly for governance clients, educational institutions, and things like that. So if you want to check out, you can check, like, for example, United States of America, you have the Americans Disabilities Act, and also we have on Canada the Accessibility Canada Act. This one is kind of recent, from 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And the European Union also has some like web accessibility directives. So this is just to ensure that everyone has access to crucial online resources, and one of those, like I mentioned, for example, submitting your taxes and things like that, right? So yeah, so now jumping into a little bit more of the technical part. So how can we kind of provide some good accessibility design? So as you can see here, I kind of noted some of the most important ones. So semantic HTML, like, we need to make sure that we are using headings in a proper way, like H1, H2, in the correct kind of order. If we structure our elements in a proper way, like, we are using lists, forms, we are using forms with labels, with the input fields, and with good description. We will go see something in the demos very shortly. Alternative text. Alternative text is mostly for describing images to our users. Let's imagine a user, a blind user, with a visual impairment, that they are navigating through our website using a screen reader, and they cannot perceive the images, but we at least should give them a context of what is happening, of where they are navigating uh, uh, on, right? And also keyboard accessibility. So not everyone has access to, like, let's say, the navigation that we use, like a mouse and keyboard, right? So there is linear navigation. Linear navigation is a kind of navigation that some users might use, which is kind of just going from each element that should have focus in our web page, and they are just going through these elements one by one. I will also give a screen reader demo today for you to understand what I mean by this linear navigation. But yeah, essentially, it's like people that making making sure that we have interactive elements like buttons and links as well, and they can be accessed by people that, for example, don't have a mouse, or they just use keyboard or any other device, right? So flashing and animated content, I think this is pretty descriptive. Like we shouldn't be using too much flashing images for people that have some visual impairments, because also they can also trigger seizures for people with epilepsy, and any sort of discomfort for visually impaired users. We need to watch out for those scenarios, right? Color contrast, of course. So like this is one of the probably most important ones and most common ones. Like this is like top things that we should check for, is if our web design and if our web applications, they have good and enough color contrast. So this is a very important one to keep in mind. Responsive design as well. Like it's very important to show the content in our web page, to make sure that, for example, if someone is watching the content on a mobile device, and especially now that we have responsive design in most of the websites, that the same website can be used for desktop and for mobiles, right? When folks are using it on the mobile devices. So we need to make sure that different resolutions, different screen sizes, that everything's going to be read accordingly, right? And be visible, like with good contrast and so on, and with the size of the letters, for example, to be in a correct size, right? Consistent navigation is also a very important one. So we shouldn't have like elements that are navigating to some like weird parts of our application, right? Because then this can be confusing to our user. If we are kind of if we don't have like a consistent structure in our web page, if we kind of like have a link to like a certain part of our page that we are just jumping in there, and the user doesn't have much context on it, it can be very confusing. And as I mentioned here, if there are some very big structure changes in our page, this will be very confusing for like screen reader users, because the flow of the website doesn't look great, or doesn't, it's not good enough. So testing and feedback. So it's also very important, if you can, to get feedback from like users with disabilities, so that we can tackle some issues that maybe the tools that we are using cannot detect, and so on, right? Like tools are not perfect, and I'm going to show you in a minute that like they are not perfect. So what are the tools that some of the common ones, some of the ones that I've used a lot in the past? So I want to take the focus into WebAIM color contrast tracker. WebAIM actually has very good so their website has very good tools for not just for contrast checking, so you can check if your colors have enough color contrast, but I also have many other resources for accessibility and so on. So I really recommend checking it. And Wave is great. Is an extension that you can actually add to your browser, And I'm really happy with Wave, because Wave, you just, you click on the button and it will show you what's are the accessibility issues that you might have on your web page. Axi DevTools. This is also an extension that you can add to the browser. Also very powerful. It's free, but I know that they have a couple of features that are paid for. So if you want to go for like the extra ones, then you probably will need to pay. Uh, Google Lighthouse. Google Lighthouse is a very good as well, because it also can kind of give you an accessibility score. It can check your web page and determine if the page is okay, if it passes a couple of accessibility checks. So it's very good, not just for performance for our web applications, but also for web accessibility. So that's really great. So later on, I will do a little bit of a demo, kind of showing you a couple, some of these tools. I have a demo prepared of a simple Angular application. Angular, I hope that will be okay, because most of the examples that I'm going to give you, it's actually applied to all the other frameworks and JavaScript libraries, and because it's mostly plain, let's say, HTML and JavaScript and so on and so forth. Screen readers. So I highly recommend NVDA. I'm a big fan, let's say, of NVDA, because NVDA has actually, it's free to use, of course. And I don't know, it's just very simple to use. And I really like simple tools to use, because, it's already accessibility itself, developing and making sure that everything is fine. It's already a big endeavor, and having a screen reader that just simply goes and reads things in a simple way, actually it's very good and very helpful. JAWS as well. JAWS is very good as well, but I believe that they also have like some paid tier of their software. So I haven't used that much JAWS, to be completely honest, but I know that it's another very good option. One resource that I would really like to kind of spotlight is the Harvard University. They have a webpage with getting started with testing your web applications with NVDA. This is, if you want to get started with NVDA and you want to understand how you should do the screen reader navigation and so on, I highly recommend reading this web page and this article that they have here, because yes, it's really, really good. And yes, it's time for demo. It's time for our first demo today. So let me just quickly jump right in, and I'm gonna go here to my Chrome. Okay, and this is our accessibility demo. All right, so far, what do we see here? This is a very simple Angular application. It's running on my local machine, right? And we see a picture of a dog, or two pictures of a dog running on a field, right? We see here some basic UI. I didn't want to go over with too complex UI because I wanted to just keep these things simple at the moment. But yeah, so one thing I would like to kind of kickstart right now is actually the color contrast that you can see here. You can see that, for example, this is a difficult to read text. And if we go, for example, to the Chrome DevTools, so we can come here and we choose the selection tool. One of the nice things now with Chrome DevTools, and this was already a couple of years they have this, it's the, as you can see here from my screen, we have the accessibility. Let me put this a little bit just bigger here, also this section and so on. There we go. So yeah, it's a bit more readable. Okay, perfect. I hope that now everything is a bit more clear. All right, and we can see here that accessibility and contrast, it's saying to us 3.94. So The value that we are looking for in contrast is 4.5. 4.5 is actually the color contrast ratio that we are kind of aiming for. If I go to the one that I have previously, because I'm using a black color in a white background, you can see that the color contrast is 21, and we have a check mark that this is great, this is good, because this also goes against the double A standard, and this is great for us. We are good to go. One thing I would like to mention is that when we will work with, for example, UI libraries and things like that, things are not going to be as simple as this, let's say, because sometimes we can have false positives or false negatives. What do I mean by this is that sometimes, like, our browser will not identify the color that it's on the background, or it will not identify the color that it's on the foreground. So it will not give you, or it will tell you that I cannot determine the color contrast ratio for this particular element, or something like this. And this happens a lot, especially when we have shadow DOM elements. I will go a little bit later, talk about the shadow DOM elements, because that's already kind of a little bit more complex scenarios, but it's something to have in mind. So another thing I will turn on right now is our screen reader. So I'm going to turn on NVDA, and
welcome to NVDA dialog. Welcome to side NA image accessibility demo.
okay, so hopefully everyone can hear now NVDA and the screen reader. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is part of the demo, and I know that it can become a little bit too chatty, and maybe for some people it's a little bit annoying. I understand that, but yeah, like, if we don't do it with the screen reader, we are gonna miss a lot. Like, and I really highly recommend everyone, when building for accessibility, to do some manual testing, and to check yourselves with the screen reader how things are flowing, how things are navigating, and how things are being read. So we are now here on the title, accessibility demo. And if I use the keyboard, I'm going to use my keyboard for navigation. So if I use the arrow down and the arrow up,
Main landmark, unlabeled graphic image.
So
to get missing image descriptions, open the context menu.
You see, it can be very chatty. But anyway, so I'm navigating through elements on my page using the arrows and up and down. If I want to read like letter by letter, I can just use left and right if I'm on a label or something like that. And for navigating to elements that should get focused, like input forms, buttons, and things like this, we can use the tab button to navigate to the next one. If we want to go back on the navigation, we can use Shift Tab, and we are going back to the previous element. So if I click
heading level 1 accessibility demo.
So you heard, like, heading level 1 accessibility demo. This is nice because we can understand that. Okay, let's imagine that we are visually impaired, yes, and okay, so I understand that this is a heading, and I understand that this is level 1, so it's probably the topmost part of my web page, and accessibility demo is, of course, the name of my page.
Unlabeled graphic image. To get missing image descriptions, open the context menu.
So I am currently on the first dog image that I have here. But if I go to the second one,
graphic a happy dog playing in a park.
So you see, there is a clear difference between those two. So the first one, he was just telling us that this is just unlabeled graphic. And he was even throwing us, if you want to get more context, just go to the context menu and so on and so forth. And the second one, because we didn't forget to get the alt attribute, and I'm going to show you here
image,
the code.
desktop Windows ML source.
I will just, shut the
alert
NVDA for a little
accessibility
bit.
test dot component.
But as you can see, this is as simple as this. This is the only difference that it is between them. That the alt attribute,
Indicates that this
the first
image
one I
is
just have image. Oh, by the way, let
saved.
me just put the code a little bit bigger. I hope like this it's fine for you. So we can see alt image doesn't give any good description of the image that we are currently navigating on. Yes, and the second one, a happy dog playing in a park. At
3
least we
days
are
ago.
describing to our users what the graphic is about. So going
Desktop
back
Windows
to our
a
example
half
here and turning again the navigation.
show alert button.
So now we are on, let's say, the show alert button. So we have this show alert button here, and
A happy dog.
hopefully,
A
if you
happy
can
dog
see,
playing in a park. Image. To get missing image show alert.
Okay. Sorry about that, but it's going to be like that with the screen reader. So, but as you can see, the show alert, the first one, when we are navigating with the tab, the things that get focused, they have this black border around them. So we understand which element that it's on the screen, which one has actually currently the focus. But I'm going to click now on the tab again, and I should be actually going to the next show alert button, but
please insert your full name. Edit required full name blank.
But I actually went to the input of the full name. Why is that? So, and muting now the screen reader. So
show alert.
These two
Show
buttons
alert.
look exactly the same. Like for us, we are looking at it. There's no visual difference between them, right? But
Desktop accessibility test dot component dot
I
html.
actually have here like a real button using the HTML button, the semantic HTML button, with the click event that when I click, what happens when I click the button. Also with the ARIA label. ARIA label is essentially a descriptive attribute to say to like what the screen reader should say to our users. And the second button that we have here is made out of a div. So essentially, I just apply the class to look it like a button. But you can see like a couple of times, and we can have situations where maybe we are styling things like divs to look like other things. And honestly, I highly discourage doing that, especially if you are building for accessible web applications, because this is what's going to happen. We are not going to be able to automatically, use the tab navigation to focus to the next element and get, a proper navigation here. So let me show you, because I can actually kind of hack this and add the tab index. So essentially, the tab index is going to tell to our application
Saved.
that, hey, look, actually, this is an element that when we are using the tab navigation, the tab to navigate, it should get focus. So
Gitlink
if we go
desktop
back to our
accessibility
demo here,
demo.
and if we go to this
products link.
to our
Show alert button.
the
Difficult to
first
read
one, and if
text.
I unmute the NVIDIA,
Clickable show alert.
there you go. So now the second button is focusable, but it doesn't give the context as on the previous one.
Show alert button.
So you see, because it's a button and because we have the show alert in the ARIA label, it will automatically, like the browser and the NVDA understands this, the screen reader properly understands this, that, okay, this is a button that I should say that it's to show alert, right? And it's clickable. But if I go to the next one,
show alert,
we just clickable show alert. But okay, it's clickable, but it doesn't give that enough context, right? So this is something that we should really watch out for. So, and continuing with our navigation,
please insert your full name. Edit required full name blank.
So you see, this is an example of like when we have an input form and we want the users to input some information, and we are being descriptive about what it's really happening here. If I go to the second one,
full name edit blank.
We just have full name edit blank. Okay, it's a full name. It's to edit, so I can edit this input field. But if I go back to the previous one,
please insert your full name edit required full name blank.
So we have, thanks to ARIA labels, we have a more descriptive approach. We are saying that this is a required field, for example. We are
Desktop
saying,
Windows
please insert
ML
your full name,
close.
not just full name in edit blank, right? It's not very descriptive, right? It doesn't give that much context to
accessibility
our
test dot component dot html. Accessibility demo.
And as you can see here, like this is essentially the difference between like the bad one and the good one. So we have a very simple input element here, which the placeholder is just full name, the type is text. I have even a span,
the span
here
element
just saying
doesn't
full
mean
name.
anything on its own,
And then
but
in
can be
this
useful
one,
when
we
used
actually have a
together with
label
the
and an
global
input,
attributes
and they basically
e.g
correlate
class,
to each
lang,
other, of course,
or
because
dir.
we have the label that is saying
It represents
that
its children.
the full name input element. And also we have here the ARIA label saying that please insert your full name and so on. And we also have here on the input saying ARIA labeled by. So the ARIA labeled by attribute, it's going to say to us, okay, so this element here is being described and it's being labeled by, and then we are pointing to the ID of the label, for example, that is here. And the ARIA required, we essentially are saying that this is a required field. It's just to give more context to the user that, okay, this is actually a required field. So please don't forget to
desktop accessibility demo.
Google moving
main
on,
landmark,
and
full
now,
name edit blank.
There we go again with the screen reader. Okay, so now I'm going to show you two examples of, for example, structures and navigations and things like that.
Navigation landmark list with 3 items home link.
I'm going to go slowly, and again, let's go to this next one.
Products link. Contact us link.
Let me go back.
Home link. Full name edit blank.
Okay, and let's go back again to that
navigation landmark list with 3 items home link.
You see, it's saying to us that it's a navigation landmark, that we have 3 items, and that we are on the home one.
Products link.
Products link.
Contact us link.
Contact us link. So now, having read this first example, let's go to the second one.
Products link. Home link. Contact us link.
So what I want to focus, it's mostly
navigation
that,
landmark list with 3 items contact us link.
So the good example that we have here of navigation, every time that we get in and out of that element, of that group of navigation elements, he's telling us in which position we are. He's telling us how many items we have in this navigation. As for the other one of the bed structure, we actually don't get any kind of context. We just know that it's a
products link, home link, contact us link.
So there you go. Like, we don't have that much descriptive information here.
Accessibility test.
And once we go to our code, we can see that the difference is that here I'm using the good semantic HTML element of nav to say that it's a navigation landmark, and then I'm using a list. As for the bad example, I'm just using the div and a bunch of spawns here for the next ones. So yeah, moving on, because I see that
accessible radio button, show the dialog, contact us link.
We're running a little bit out of time, but again, let me for example show you here the show dialog.
Show the dialog button.
Show the dialog button. So one thing I want to also show you is, for example, when we have modals and pop-ups and things like that. So I want you to also listen carefully.
Dialog, type your pet name. Type your pet name. Edit pet name blank.
So you see, we got a model, we entered the model, it was telling us what we need to do when it opens the model. So please type your pet name and so on. Now, one very important thing to have in mind with models is to trap the focus on the models. So if I continue the navigation, for example, let's say I'm going with tab navigation and I go and
Cancel button.
cancel button,
Confirm button.
confirm button, and then what happens when I go to the next one?
Toolbar. View site information menu button.
I went to the toolbar on the top.
Address and search bar edit has autocomplete control plus L selected localhost 4200.
Okay, so the address bar.
Zoom. 1.
Zoom.
Bookmark this tab button.
Bookmark.
Accessibility demo document. Button show the dialog. Show
and-
alert button.
Okay, thank you. And then we went back again to the beginning of our page. This is not good because if I continue,
Clickable show alert.
clickable show alert, this was the buttons that are behind our model.
Please insert your full name. Edit required full name blank.
And you see, this is confusing. For someone that doesn't see, this can be very confusing. So what can we do to kind of
Desktop
give a
window.
better experience?
Accessibility
So
test dot component
I'm going
HTML.
to add an attribute here to my section here.
Save.
And let's see what this does. This attribute is called inner. This is actually not this is not very this is kind of a new attribute that was added, the inert one, which essentially is just to block any actions from happening from like this section here that contains all this rest of the code. And I'm just going to show you
example
here,
of good structure
how this looks like. So if I'm going to go here to the
show the dialog button,
and I
main
click
landmark,
enter,
dialog, type your pet name, your pet name,
you can
edit
see
pet
now
name
that,
blank.
thank you. You can see now that the background is kind of blurred because I had also added some kind of CSS. But now if I continue the navigation and I go for cancel
button, confirm button.
I also then should be able to actually go to the address bar because, maybe they want to get out of the website and we need to provide them ability to go to the address bar and so on.
Toolbar, address and zoom, bookmark this main landmark,
but
dialog,
see,
type your pet name, your pet name, edit pet name blank.
Thank you very much. Once we get out of the address bar, we immediately go again back to our model. So at least we are keeping the focus in our website on the part that the user needs. We are waiting for some user input, right?
Cancel button.
This is
heading
super
level
important.
1 accessibility demo.
So
accessible
let's go
radio
now
buttons.
to the access radio buttons example, which this is also kind of very important. So
main landmark, grouping, pizza radio button not checked 1 of 3. Navigate to form example page visited. Grouping.
So
show the grouping. Pizza radio button not checked 1 of 3.
So here we have a radio group example, and to select it, you just need to use the arrows up and down.
Sushi radio button checked 2 of 3.
There you go.
Burger radio button checked 3 of 3. Sushi radio button checked 2 of 3.
This seems okay. We are navigating through the list and we are selecting the item that as we are going.
Pizza radio button checked 1 of 3.
And when I click tab,
navigate to form example page visited link.
I go to the next example, but then what happens when I go shift
grouping?
tab?
Pizza radio button checked 1 of 3.
It goes to the same element that I had selected previously and so on. But there is a better way to actually do that, because
show the dialog button.
If you check again, like once we go back to that accessible radio buttons list.
Grouping. Pizza radio button checked 1 of 3.
We were not giving that much context, like where is the text saying which is the best food or something like that. Like we didn't got like enough description about, okay, this is I'm selecting pizza, I'm selecting sushi, I'm selecting burger. What is happening? Like, what is happening here, right?
Desktop Windows ML accessibility test.component.html drop radio buttons test.
Okay, and I have another example
main landmark
here of radio group, but slightly different. Slightly different. If we render again our solution
main landmark,
so
show the dialog button.
Now let's see what happens.
Which is the best food? Grouping. Pizza radio button not checked 1 of 3. Sushi radio button checked 2 of 3. Burger radio button checked 3 of 3. Sushi radio button checked 2 of 3.
And once we go
Navigate
out,
to form example page visited link. Which is the best food? Grouping, Sushi radio button check 2 of 3.
so just to give you kind of an example of, a group, a radio button group, and you see like the difference in the code is,
Radio buttons
I wouldn't say it's not that
test.component.html.
much. For
Accessibility
example,
demo
we have
2.
here just
Visual Studio Code.
divs
Radio buttons
and using Angular and
test.component.html.
G4
Accessibility demo
to
2.
basically iterate
Visual
and
Studio Code
create like
document.
on the UI
Application.
my
Main
list
landmark.
of options.
The editor is
right?
not accessible at this time.
Basically,
To enable
the difference
screen
that I
reader
have here is that
optimized mode,
I'm using the
use Shift plus
proper,
Alt
let's
plus
say,
F1
semantic
option.
HTML. So I'm using a field set. I'm using also the legend
The legend
element
element
to
represents
basically
a caption
give a
for the rest of
description
the
of
contents
my
of the
field
legend
set
element's
and
parent field
what are
set
the
element, if any.
what we are actually using this radio group for. Okay, so this is so far
Folder view, PowerPoint, About accessibility
for
checker
this for
accessibility.
our first
From
demo
current
here. I'm just gonna go
slideshow,
back to the
complete.
presentation here, and let's
Slide
move on
17,
quickly. So
web accessibility.
again, giving some couple of examples here with web
Minimize moves the
accessibility.
window out of the
These
way.
ones are some of the most common ones, like ARIA hidden. This is to indicate that the element shouldn't be read by the screen reader, and the assistive technologies. The disabled is that to indicate that, the button, for example, if we want to submit something. Actually, on the second demo, I have a button that it's disabled that will say that it's unavailable. So essentially, we want to block the button because some form needs to be filled and so on. ARIA required, ARIA invalid. This is, of course, when we are dealing with forms and we are saying that the element is required, or if it's invalid because there is errors and so on. Also, the described by and labeled by, I showed you that we had the label that, or the input that it's labeled by our input element. It's labeled by the previous label and so on, to give some like additional context. ARIA live, it's very important because this is for regions of the page that are going to be dynamically added, removed, and changed. We are going to see a very nice example that I have on the next demo about it. So ARIA role is also super important because we actually can use sometimes like some divs or other elements that are essentially doing the same thing, and we can actually get away with it if we actually present that this element has the ARIA role of a button, of a menu, of a link, or a list, just to simply tell to the assistive technologies what kind of functionality this element is providing us. ARIA expanded, as you can guess, it's from like accordion sections that we are expanding, trees and things like this. These are the sort of examples. Then we have the others like, ARIA pop-up, ARIA pressed, ARIA grab. These are other attributes that we should be using when we are dealing with like the pop-ups and when we want to check things that are pressed and so on. And also the grabbed ones, it's when we have the drag and drop effects and so on. But these are I just wanted to kind of brush over these ones. I want you to then later just have these ones in mind and don't forget about them, and use them in your applications as well, right? So moving on as well. So the radio group pattern, this was kind of the example that I just showed you. So we have there the role that's saying that this is a radio group. The role none is actually very popular to use when we have, for example, some small icons, graphics, or SVG elements that, to make sure that the assistive technologies, they understand what the content is. And again, like, for the radio group, we should be using ARIA label because it's essentially giving us a better description, what the option 3 actually stands for, right? So what is the option 3 for? Like, is it 3 stars, or what is it? In our option there, I think it was burger. So, ARIA checked again. This is also very important because, it's identifying the button, and if we have users that they are using on their machines some high contrast settings and so on, or on the browser, for example, it's making sure that they are properly they have the proper colors and so on, right? Tab index -1. This is also very popular to use on the radio groups because this is kind of like the initial state for the radio buttons, and the tab index as well 0, just because just to get some tab navigation to get the focus onto the element and so on. Yeah. So just quickly brushing up on those things. So the inert example that I showed you previously as well, it's very important because, as you could see, like we might have a content that it's off screen, that it's hidden, or at the moment we should not interact with it. This is what the example that I showed you when we had the pop-up, and essentially when we were continuing with our navigation, we were getting focus on things that at that time we didn't want to get focused, because essentially it was very confusing then to the screen reader and to the users, right? So just I'm showing you here a couple of examples where you would use like the inert attribute, like carousels, modals, dialogues, side navigations as well. I also have a very quick example of a side navigation, and also like fading and disabling, like input forms that we want to put the shipping address. This is a very common scenario that if the billing address is the same as the shipping address, and we essentially want to make that area of the billing address, if they click that it's the same, and we just should show one address form, then we should use the inert for the second one, because then it's not going to be interactive, and it's just simply not going to be read by assistive technologies, because it's not necessary, right? So yeah, and also like if you want to just disable entire part of your UI because of the current scenario that you might have, right? So second demo here, we are gonna go back to our little web page, and we are gonna jump into the form example
Selected
page.
option
And
accessibility
again,
demo document blank. Show alert clickable. Navigate
the
toolbar. Accessibility demo document. Main landmark. Form landmark. Please insert your name. Edit blank.
So here again, we have a form. We have with the name, the email, the password, right? So what I want to kind of show here is how maybe the validation example could work. Yeah, I want to do this quickly because I see that we don't have much time, but I just want to kind of use some quick examples. So for example, if I go to the next one immediately.
Alert name is required. Email, edit blank.
So you see, the first thing that was read was that the name is required, and the second thing was that which field we are currently on, right? And if I go back.
Alert email is required. Please insert your name. Edit has autocomplete blank.
So, it again, first it read that the email is required.
Submit.
The email is required. You now see here the search suggestions and so on. But yeah, it's saying that the email is required, right? It's telling me that, whenever, before it says that the element that I am at, the attribute of ARIA live and the alert, it's gonna tell us that, okay, you should read that once we have an error and an error is appearing there. So for example,
edit blank.
I'm here and I'm, for example, typing the email. As I'm typing, of course, the screen is reading what I'm typing. If I go to the next one, for example.
Alert invalid email format. Password. Edit protected required blank.
We also have, you see, like the invalid email format previously was not showing up because I had just the email is required because I didn't have anything. So
alert password is required.
And now email, the password is required.
Edit invalid right? Blank. HFJDHDHDFJFH unselected.
Yes. Okay. And essentially, we need to make sure that when we have forms that things are being read in the proper order and in the proper time, because this can be very confusing if you are jumping through the things and then the time that you are sending the alert that the email was required or that something is not okay. we gotta watch out for things like that. So let me just quickly put here
dot
some
M
sample email. Fantastic.
password
And
edit protected cancel forms password
I'm
edit
just going to
protected
put
required blank
some password.
star.
So as I was typing, very quickly, right? And the alert that I had here that the password must be 8 characters long and so on, it was not read because essentially when the user is typing, the screen reader kind of jumps on top of that itself, and it just reads already the next thing that you are typing. So for example, if I go again,
bullet accessibility demo document blank image which is now mainland alert name alert R
sorry,
auto accessibility demo
let me
document
just
V
quickly
M
do this,
password
and we are
edit
back here.
protected required blank star.
And if now
Alert password must be at least 8 characters long.
yeah,
Alert password
it
must contain at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase
so
letter,
essentially,
one number,
again,
and one
just
special
make sure
character.
that the alert
Cancel
is
form
popping up
submission and
and
go
not
to
like
main
the
page
password
button.
that it's popping up, and then if I just continue
Password
to type
star
things and stuff like this,
star
it's not gonna
star
let me continue
star.
and so on, right? Or it's just gonna be bothering there, and the user doesn't understand what's going on. So continuing.
Cancel form submission and go to main page button. Load data button.
So now I have here a load data button, and with the load data button, I just want to quickly show you like what happens with things like, for example, take some time and we have a loading progress bar and so on. So how does it look like?
Alert busy loading data. This might take a while.
So we see that, there is a visual cue of how much it's going.
Loading complete alert. This content will appear after it was loaded.
There you go. So not a visual cue, but the audio cue about the loading stuff. So looking
desktop
at our
radio
code
buttons
here, the
Files
form
Explorer
validation
tree view.
test,
Form
like,
validation test.component.html
there we
1 of
go.
3 level
So
4.
I have actually two examples here. I have one
Main
example,
landmark.
the initial one that has progress, HTML progress element. And I'm setting here what it's my minimum and maximum value, and as well as saying what it's the current progress,
Way ARIA
what's the
reference.
current value that it's going. And as well as it goes, then it fills up the gauge. And here I have another element, which is a div. It's not a progress one, but it's also okay because I'm just simply saying what's the role of my element. I'm saying that the role is a progress bar, and it understands that. And then I'm saying that ARIA value now, what's my current value of the
form
progress.
validation
so this
test
is okay
component.
because this then it's telling the user exactly what value. So if we navigate actually with the arrows down, we would get the focus on the bar there, and it will tell us how much
accessibility
time
demo
or
Google,
how much percentage
this content
it's going.
load data.
If I do this again,
alert busy loading data. This might take a while. Button submit. Out of section progress bar 40. Progress bar 55.
There you go. You can see that it's saying
loading
the
complete
current
alert.
progress.
This content will appear after it was loaded.
Okay.
Album information grouping.
Just
album
another
combo box. Select an album.
So another
Collapsed.
just quick example of boxes and selection boxes and things like that. So I just want to kind of come here.
List. Select an album.
The list is expanded. It's the list of 5, 1 of 5. And if I now go here
Rolling Stones, Exile on main ST 2 of 5.
2 of 5, it's telling us in which, which element
Pink
it is.
Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon 3 of 5. Album,
and we select
combo box Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon collapsed.
Exactly. So it's collapsed. We are giving all this information to the user that it's collapsed. It's selected Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Select
and
album button.
Select album button. So then we click here and we just.
The Dark Side of the Moon. The Dark Side of the Moon is the 8th studio album by Pink Floyd, released on March 1st, 19th. The Dark Side of the Moon is the 8th studio album by Pink Floyd, released on March 1st, 19th. Desktop form validation test.component.html. Accessibility demo 2. Visual Studio Code. Form validate radio buttons test.
let me drop down example.
Files Explorer
yes,
Tree View.
so there you
Drop
go.
down
We have
example
this
dot will
attribute
be
here
updated
called ARIA
and
Live
describes
Polite.
the types of
And the
updates
ARIA
that
Live element simply tells the screen reader that this is dynamic content, and when this content appears and it shows up, it should be read out loud. So that's what we are saying to it here.
The
And
dark
just
side.
another very quick example here with the toggle sidebar. I actually want to just show you that.
So toggle side nav button.
There we go. Oh, okay, yeah, because it's on my top there. So toggle side nav bar. I have my sidebar navigation here popping
Toolbar.
up.
View site information. Address and search bar edit has autocomplete control plus L selected.
But then my focus actually
zoom,
goes to
bookmark,
the top there.
accessibility
It doesn't
demo.
go really
Close
to
the
where
side,
I wanted, which
toggle
is actually
extra
my
text
side
button.
panel
The
here. So
drop down
there are
example.
sometimes situations where we actually need to kind of take control over what is happening here.
Main landmark.
And essentially just saying to the drawer or say to my drawer button where I want the focus to go next. So essentially, we go back here to our example.
Alert.
And
select
I have
album.
all these
Toggle side
things,
nav button.
Toggle side nav bar button. I click
toggle
enter.
Extra text button.
And immediately I'm going to there to get the focus on the toggle extra text.
Close the side panel button. Toggle side nav button.
And again, we are back to the toggle side nav button. So this is a very quick example of like
form
how
validation
the navigation should look like, because we need to give a perspective to the user
Visual
that,
Studio Code.
like where we are at the moment.
Tools accessibility.
All right, very quickly now going
slide 20
to the next, continuing the presentation.
Complete.
So I showed you the progress bar. Also, by the way, the resources and everything, we are going to publish this. I want this to be available for everyone, so you can check the code and check everything. So you check those ARIA attributes for yourself and see what works, what doesn't work. Okay. So here again, the meter. It's very important to have in mind then the ARIA role of progress bar slider, maximum values, minimum values, so the user understands what information we have there, right?
Slide 23.
Also, very important is that sometimes when we try too much, to put too much ARIA elements and things like that, like, oh, sorry. We essentially might be doing worse than just the simply semantic HTML that we have there. And this is a good example here that, we have a role of log on the table element, and this then is going to be perceived by the assistive technologies as a log, not as a table. And this can be confusing as well. And again, like we have UL here with role navigation, this is a list. This is not, let's say, a navigation region. You should do like I showed you on the previous on the first demo, like that I have the nav semantic HTML, and then we have the list like in a proper way. So that also is very important. Yeah. One very quick thing I would like to talk about is the Shadow DOM hell, or Shadow DOM, using Shadow DOM, because there are, when we are using UI libraries and things like that, there might be the problems. We might have big problems when we are using those, because essentially, like, we don't have much control over those UI elements because they were not done by us. They were done by other people, and maybe they are not accessible. So we need to essentially go and check by ourselves, doing some manual testing to check if everything is actually according to the accessibility guidelines. Yes, because some things might not get focused when they should get focused, and things like that. And the color contrast as well. Maybe there are some elements that don't have enough contrast, and we are going to have problems later. So yeah, again, just sometimes if you need, I would even say override maybe some of the UI kits, SDKs, and library elements, but be aware, of course, of the updates, because we know that. But I think that it's preferably to go to the GitHub or open a ticket or something for them to change the UI elements and to make them more accessible, because this is really, really important. So yeah, make sure that the elements in the Shadow DOM are navigated, that if they need to be interacted, that they have the keyboard, they can be accessed by using keyboard navigation. And if actually the content that is on the shadow DOM is essentially, please just expose it on the global DOM, because there might be issues that the screen reader might not be able to read it and so on. So please check that. And yeah, regularly test your web application. So now I just want to already kind of ramp up and just give you folks just a couple of tools that you might want to use and you might be interested in with in terms of testing accessibility. These are some examples of tools that you can use on your pipelines, CI/CD pipelines, to check for accessibility issues that you might have in your code before you even go to production, and so on. So yeah, please check those out. There are many of them actually, which is great. And yeah, just use the one that it suits more your scenario, right? So now with AI as well, I just want to say that there is now kind of a surge of accessibility tools that are using AI. We have Deck AI, which is from the makers of the AXC tools. So these are probably the best ones that you can find. And also there is also some AI-powered screen readers, and some of them, one of the examples is Accessip. So you can also check them out. And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say quickly. Also, for mobile accessibility, I know that the time is short today. I just didn't want to go over, but as you can see, there's many different details in accessibility that are very important. But I wanted to say about mobile devices that testing for mobile and testing for web are completely kind of, let's say, I would say completely different situations. There were times that when I was working in my situation, I was working on an Ionic application that it's we use Angular on the front end, but it also can be used on iOS and Android. And the scenarios were different. Like the situations that we had, the errors that we had were different. So please, use the manual linear navigation on your phone. And if you are using Android, you have TalkBack. It's the screen reader in Android, and VoiceOver, it's for iOS. So please use them and check your applications using those. So very important things to have in mind. So watch out again for the third-party libraries like Material UI, Ionic, Carbon, any others that you're using for React, for Svelte, for Angular, whatever, or for Vue. Just check them out, see if they actually accessible, they have good accessibility, and if they don't, just please be vocal on the GitHub issues so they can improve them. Sometimes accessibility is more important than some clean code practices, but at the end of the day, it's the user experience, right? We want our web pages to be accessible to everyone. This is the main goal here. Watch out for the shadow DOM again, because I had many headaches with the shadow DOM. And again, be also sure to trap focus for models and pop-ups and so on. Another thing very important to have in mind, it's the language tag, because if you have websites that are different in different languages, the language tag, it's very important. This is set on the body and the HTML, the root of your web page. So please set it so that the screen reader can be read in the correct language. And again, check the ARIA states properties. The Mozilla, they have awesome documentation in terms of accessibility and the ARIA attributes and so on. Also read the documentation of the UI libraries, again, that you are using. And also, when in doubt, I always say that, just use the web native elements. Like we have semantic, HTML that works great. And, yeah, just go for it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. All right. That is it. So now, thank you very much. I know that the last part I went a little bit too fast, but I just wanted to make sure that we don't go too much over the time. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you folks might have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vitor. It was really interesting presentation.
David, I cannot hear you.
Oh,
Sorry.
I don't know. I'm unmuted. I should be.
Oh, sorry. Give me a second. It's me. Sorry. Sorry, it's me.
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. I
Right.
added the mute, on my computer. That's why, because of the screen reader.
No worries. So thank you once more, Vitor, for the presentation. It was really interesting. And as well, thank you for doing a good job making the web applications more accessible to all of the people. I can see we have some questions from the audience. So do you know if supporting accessibility in web apps will be soon become required by law? Did you hear anything about that?
Yes. Actually, especially in Canada, I can say for the Canada example because I worked with a Canadian client, and yes, like it's required by law to have a certain level of accessibility. What they are looking for is the WCAG 2.1 and these AA's standard to at least have on the websites, especially talking about educational institutions and government institutions. Yes, and this is it's really gonna become required by law if it's not already, because there's many laws, and I don't want to scroll too much into the laws and stuff, but yeah, it's very important to have.
Yeah, I think it's not only important but great to have on your website, so everyone can visit it and it can be readable for everyone and visible for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't see, I think, any more questions. We have some comments from the public that it was great presentation. So
Okay,
I hope
good.
it was for me it was as well really interesting to hear and see as well the practice demo. So how does it work on the behind, because mostly we don't see what's going on the behind, we just see the final effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, honestly, I previously had no experience. A couple of years ago, I had no experience with accessibility, and working with this education client where this was one of the imperative things, and every university was asking us, like, this was actually a matter of having a contract with those universities or not. So we are talking about money even in these situations, that the schools just wanted to work with us if we would make sure and guarantee that we had the WCAG 2.1 accessibility standard in our application. So yeah.
Right. And maybe question from me, just from curiosity.
Sure.
Were you a self-learner when it comes to the subject of accessibility, or maybe you have some recommendations on some sources you took your knowledge from?
Good question. So I actually was more of a self-learner, and essentially most of my knowledge from the accessibility and what I read about was actually just going through the Mozilla documents and the web consortium, the resources that they have there, because they are very simple. They don't go too crazy, and they explain to you exactly what each of the ARIA attributes are exactly doing. And this is actually what it's very important. As for like the tools and things like this, I just kind of, again, it's kind of self-learning. I didn't follow any course on anything, to be completely honest. I just searched and looked for tools for accessibility and screen readers and things that could help me, like the color contrast, for example. I just, searched online for a good accessibility color contrast. And and I came up with those ones that I showed today on the presentation. Yeah.
All right. I don't think there is any more questions from the public. I cannot see anything more on the chat. So thank you very much, Vitor, for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with us. And for those of you who would like to be on the other side, so be on the Victor's seat, You can always check our twf.community website, in where you can sign in for presentation, and you can be speaker as well as Vito was today. I also encourage you to follow or subscribe our social media channels. So for sure, YouTube, where you can find all of our previous meetups. This one will be there as well, of course. And you can follow us on LinkedIn or on Facebook to stay with the newest subjects and topics. All right, I think that will be all for today. Thank you once more, and have a great evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.